Okay, so the really weird thing about this week's is I've already opened these up and brought them out of their packages. The main reason was, they both showed up together, and One Piece One Piece is just a high priority watch for my Friday friend. So, for him, this comes out, and we've got disc 1 and 2, and this is of course DVD and Blu-ray. So we got Blu-ray and DVD. Discs 1s and Blu-ray DVD discs 2s. So watching this was super high priority. And normally I leave the other stuff that comes with One Piece alone, except that there's a lot of stuff for me to answer regarding Neon Genesis Evangelion, especially its release here on Blu-ray. This sticker's still on, so there's at least the taking of this sticker off. Now on Blu-ray, all 26 episodes plus Evangelion Death, True and End of Evangelion. I suspect I read something wrong there. We can get rid of the sticker at least, so there's at least a little bit. But this one I opened up because I had to fire it up and, figure some stuff out about it. Let's see if there's anything here. I can see a region A there. That's pretty noteworthy. Looking at the inside, it's not the most spectacularly presented, but it is still kind of nice and comfy. I think that's the word I'm using for it. So, this part's obviously really short, so hopefully I'll have more to say other than here's this week's anime DVD collection update. So yeah, good amount of anime watch this time, beginning with Our Last Crusade this is Our Last Crusade or The Rise of the New World, or of New World. And I didn't watch all of this. I only watched the first 4 episodes, and it's not bad, but it does kind of feel like it either fails the 3-episode test, maybe, or it succeeds, and the rest of the anime will be full of neat stuff, but it almost feels like there should feel like there's more meaning to it than there actually is. I'd say the first episode starts off on a good beat. It's not necessarily one where you assume it's some stellar masterpiece per se, but it still begins with, oh yeah, these characters are kind of cool, and our main 2 characters, the ones shown here, meet each other, and they have a rather interesting engagement, I would say. It is these 2 characters, right? Yeah. Just as long as I'm not, it's because she's on the back here, and so when I'm talking to y'all and seeing this, I'm actually seeing it in the camera, not looking too closely. The main issue is that after that, while what it does is neat and kind of amusing, it feels tonally different, like it's trying to set something up, but by the end of the 3rd episode, it feels like, while it tries to give you some payoff, it doesn't feel like it's actually committed to giving you something. So I guess that's the real problem with it, is it feels like it's got these fancy ideas, but it doesn't really commit to them, and that could be because either it doesn't know how to, doesn't care to, doesn't want to. I'm not really sure, but I guess there's that feeling of unsatisfactory, and I went on to episode 4, didn't get a feeling that was changing that, and then I think other stuff happened that just caused I think mostly this stuff showed up, and I realized I needed to check out the last thing I'm going to talk about. But so, it's really hard to say, because this speaks to some sort of weakness with the first handful of episodes, but there's nothing there that's necessarily outright bad, maybe just at worst somehow not engaging. I don't know. And then we got One Piece Season 11 Voyage 5. I never remember what season we're on, how many voyages into that we are. And I'd say this one doesn't help with that. It's moving forward and things are happening, but it almost feels like it keeps getting distracted by itself. Now, this isn't like Bleach's ADHD in the middle of a story, all of a sudden it tells in a completely another story arc that has absolutely nothing to do with anything, really. Instead, it's building stuff. And one of the things that's nice about it is it's definitely... it definitely feels like they are reintroducing and reusing elements, even though it feels like they're going overboard-ish with some of them. But, you know, overall, it feels like maybe there's excuses in there to kind of delay things. On a scale from one Hobbit, it's not even a Hobbit movie. And I'm talking about the Hobbit live-action movies, which you... Well, I say you, but maybe some of y'all didn't experience. But I definitely noticed when I watched the first movie that it felt like it had been a 1.5, 2 movies stretched to 3 movies. It felt... I couldn't put my energy into watching it. And anyways, this one isn't quite that bad. I mean, I wouldn't say it's anywhere near that bad. But because again, you know, as it does stuff, it's doing stuff. It's just kind of feeling like, is it getting close to revealing some interesting stuff? Because it feels like certain stuff has been introduced, but I don't know how much of that stuff is necessarily as great as I was hoping. And I don't know what my friend, his opinion on it is, but, you know, he got into it mostly because, you know, first of all, he gets more into stuff when they run for a very long time. I think he's not as tropey. He doesn't get pulled in by tropes as easily, I guess. So I think there's some shows out there where you can start watching them, and sometimes you can pick them up really easily because they introduce the tropes to the characters, and then you're watching the show kind of from the perspective of those tropes being played with. And I'm wondering if maybe he doesn't quite play on that level when he watches stuff. So long-running stuff instead builds up stuff that's interesting from things that happened before. And he might be liking this because it might be doing that. But I also can't help but wonder that he had a lot of appreciation for the Alabast arc. Like, that one felt like it had really good build-up, payoff, and stuff. And I felt like the story that came immediately after that also had that. And it hasn't been quite as strong since. And part of the problems are that it's hard to tell how much of the super world building it's doing. I've kind of mentioned that one of the nice things about One Piece as a series is it has multiple levels of building. It has the local stuff that's happening, and, you know, I'm seeing a lot of that here where I don't feel like it's doing world building per se so much. It's doing events that are happening right now building, kinda. So they get more complicated because they are introducing new characters as they go along, and we're learning about new characters, and some of it is kind of strange, but for the most part, you know, you got stuff at that level. You have stuff that happens at a slightly higher level where maybe you have a story arc about characters' goals, but then you have a bigger, much bigger arc that's them trying to work towards something as well. And then even above that, which is what I call the super world building, you have kind of these hints as to mysteries about the bigger picture than anybody's really looking. Some people who kind of have hints and thoughts, but it's really hard. We can't really look up information to find out when we might get satisfactory stuff along those lines. Maybe we don't necessarily need to short term. It's at least entertaining, but at the same time, you know, I think last time I was getting more enjoyment out of it than this one, and I'd say this one's probably better than third, but mostly because sometimes it feels like a really good storytelling builds something until it suddenly pops, and it felt like things should be closer to popping than they are. Instead, it feels like it's not, and so it feels like it's diminishing it somewhat. But, you know, it is what it is. Hopefully this analysis is thought-provoking. And then last but probably the most important is Neon Genesis Evangelion on Blu-ray. Now, it's my understanding it was released on Blu-ray in Japan. I don't remember if it was released on Blu-ray elsewhere. And it's interesting. I guess I didn't look at everything on here, did I? This is probably not a bad idea because they have the list of episodes on things. So if I look at number 4, and I can't read it, that's a... The main thing I'm wondering is how complete this actually is. So there are director's cut versions of episodes. I think it's 22 and 23. It's somewhere in the 20s, before 25, 26. 25 and 26 are obviously the original ending to the series, and for all intents and purposes, there are some ways of watching Evangelion where you can skip those and watch End of Evangelion, possibly. There's tonal differences, massive tonal differences. But anyways, one of the things that I noticed immediately firing this up, I go into a lot of these things blind, is I noticed it wasn't the ADV dub. And then when I reflected on it, I had heard that there was a Netflix dub, I thought. Or maybe it was just a dub that was available on Netflix, because this is released by G-Kids. They kind of mop up some bigger name items. So the fact that they got Evangelion is probably in line with those, because a lot of the other stuff they're known for are Studio Ghibli titles, which of course was something that used to be owned by Disney, or rather the release rights were held by Disney, and I'm guessing Disney lost it at some point. Probably because Studio Ghibli was not very happy with something they were doing, and might make sense. Disney likes to bring a lot of big names in, regardless of whether or not they are maybe the appropriate voices for some of the stuff, per se. But, all that aside, Neon Genesis Evangelion, it's hard to say for certain what I think of the dub. I've only sampled a couple parts of it, and there's a part of me that realized while watching them that I was definitely expecting certain emotional beats from the old ADV dub, but I can't help but wonder if maybe the dub for this one is more accurate towards the Japanese in terms of tonality. I'd really have to watch them side by side, a whole lot to do, and I just don't give myself the time to invest in figuring that out. But it was a thought I have, and that might in some ways make it a good dub, possibly. It's really hard to say, because Evangelion was dubbed so long ago, it was the first DVDs in my collection. It's that fucking old. At a minimum, I watched some of episode 13. I really like some stuff that happens there. I watched all of episode 16. And while there's some interesting, again, emotional stuff that I'm used to being there, I can't help but think that what was actually here was, again, more accurate. I watched some of episode 18. If y'all know why I watch these episodes, it would make sense why I would choose them. And the other thing I checked out was some of End of Evangelion. I checked that out first because I knew one of the major reasons that there was a desire to have Evangelion released on Blu-ray here in the States is prior to this, our only release here was the old Manga Entertainment DVD release. And even as far as DVD releases go, that one was considered a pretty poor video transfer. The biggest giveaway is I'm trying to think how to explain this without spoiling it. The biggest point that I've ever seen made was that at a certain part of the movie, a certain entity kind of represents a sort of, I guess, rebirth of humanity by having two things open in their hand. And on the Manga Entertainment transfer, you can only see that there are two things that open on the hand. Whereas, in both this version and, better transfer quality versions, you could actually see that it was actually two vaginas. I guess I marked my channel as not for kids, so I can use the big boy word, or the big girl word in this case. But yeah, and that's supposed to be representation. It's not the only thing in that movie that actually looks like a vagina, You know, it's supposed to be represented in a couple places. And symbolism aside, it's at least something where you can be like, oh, really? Jesus. And you know to look for it if you're looking for something that's a good transfer. And the fact that you can tell on this, it says the video quality is at least good enough for that. If it could maybe be better, I'm not quite sure. It's also possible there may be something about the audios that's a little off. I know that song from End of Evangelion, whose name I'm forgetting right now, it felt like it wasn't quite present as I'm used to it feeling like. And this could be an artifact of maybe the English dub version. I don't know, because sometimes I watch whatever just happens to be convenient. I don't know. So overall, I kind of was expecting there to be important things about it. And I didn't even realize that the dub thing would probably be an important thing to think about. But that's why that one got opened early, and because I kind of knew I had to at least analyze it so that people who maybe didn't know, or maybe were slightly aware but waiting for me to talk about it, talked about it. But, you know, I have 1, 2, 3 copies of Evangelion in my collection, and this is a welcome fourth. It still doesn't beat Akira, but to be fair, Akira is only a single movie, and so it's kind of harder for any releases to number greater than Akira. And while Akira isn't my favorite movie, I don't think it even is in my top list, it's still a really fascinating show that's just, or not show, a really fascinating movie that's actually, you know, definitely one of those, this is important in the history of anime things. Evangelion is another one of those. I know nowadays it's probably easier to forget about that, but it's my understanding that Evangelion completely changed the industry. And we're not even just talking about the mecha industry. We're talking about the entire industry. And it's sort of like how, you know, every Batman movie after the Tim Burton Batman kind of understands to have this darker undertone to it. Whether it's, you know, deliberately going gothic or something like that. I think even Batman and Robin, Batman Forever, maintains some of that while also maintaining some of the, I don't think comical appeal, kind of the colorful flashiness I think that you might have gotten from older Adam West Batman, for example. You know, but it basically means that a trend got started with Batman because of that. I'm trying to think if a similar thing could be said about Superman, but I think Superman's just a problem where he's just buried underneath people who, not people, he's just buried underneath his own history. Movie Superman tends to be pretty bad because, well, it's hard for the shift to go back to what makes Superman entertaining and compelling. So instead we get a lot of stuff that can kind of be that. Strange. Oh, well. Where was I going with all this? Anyways, Evangelion, as far as I understood it, just changed the industry. Likewise, Akira, I'm not sure if saying it changed the industry is quite enough, because it's my understanding it also saved the industry. It birthed the popularity of cyberpunk, as I understand it. And that as a genre has kept anime alive and actually, you know, kind of respected as a, oh, well, here's a thought-provoking thing. Oh, here's a thought-provoking thing. And, you know, not all anime is that, because obviously, you know, the thought-provoking biggest chungus, well, okay, that's not biggest chungus, that's a Bahuga la Boogalas or whatever. Or, you know, since we can use the adult words here, boobies. You know, there's plenty of anime that are definitely about the sex appeal, but there's also plenty of anime that are, like, trying to think. And, you know, I've definitely given criticism at some that are like, I know it's trying to think, but it's kind of gotten lost in its own reasoning. I've pointed that out plenty of times. And, you know, it's still respectable that it tries. That there are people out there who feel like they can try. I don't know. So let's see. Other than that, well, you know, just still playing Dead by Daylight. I have successfully leveled all of my killers to 15. That's only notable because that means that all killers have all 4 of their perk slots unlocked. You know, they don't have all perks unlocked, and they don't have most of them don't have any of their perks at a purple level, so they're dealing with mostly green and yellow level perks. Those are the lowest 2 levels. Although you could also say that green and purple are the highest 2 levels. You know, it goes yellow, green, purple. Blah 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 blah. The point is, they at least have a little more variety to what they're bringing to the games. And while not everything is like completely metagamey, so for example, with Pinhead, it would have been nice to get Hoarder. I haven't unlocked Lethal Pursuer. I haven't unlocked Franklin's Demise, but those are also meta perks for Pinhead. But at the same time, I really don't want to try that hard, so I'm okay with that. Instead, it's more like, so when I play this character, the survivors are definitely going to get hit a little bit more by this or that. It's interesting because during One Piece, I was actually practicing playing as the nurse. And if you're not familiar with Dead by Daylight, the nurse is both the best and worst killer in the game at the same time. So, to clarify, worst means that, you know, the people that make the game, behavior, I think is what they're called, unless people call it BHVR, whichever it is, they apparently do keep track of how many kills each killer gets, and nurse is by far the lowest. But if you talk to anybody that's a high-skilled player, they will tell you nurse is the best killer. She's the hardest. And the trick there is, again, high skill ceiling. You know, it takes a lot to learn how to use her, to start getting good with her, and the better you get at the game, she keeps getting better and better. Your ability to predict where survivors are going to go makes her better. Your ability to predict how they're going to try to juke you makes her even better. Like, the more you learn, the more you think about the game, the better. And once you're at that level, a lot of the things in the game that are used to slow down, stop, or whatever kills, well, she just ignores them. So pallets and windows and doors tend to not mean anything to a really good nurse player. And I don't necessarily want to be that good. I don't want to be a sweaty Dead by Daylight player at all. Y'all know this. So during One Piece, what I decided to do was turn my volume off, put 50% of my attention to watching One Piece, and the other 50% to just playing as nurse. And when I say playing as nurse, I mean really not trying hard. So it's mostly about blinking absolutely everywhere I go. The main point of that is it's not the best strategy per se, especially when you're just patrolling generators doing that. But for me, it was about getting used to her blink, the timing of her blinks, the timing of the double blinks. Hey, I want to teleport exactly on that generator. And I actually did that while survivors were on there once or twice. I grabbed a survivor off of a generator after teleporting. It's pretty impressive when you're only paying 50% attention. Now, this isn't to say I'm a good nurse player at all. I'm really bad still. But it does give me some hope that, you know, maybe the next time I have a daily and I have to do some nurse quest, maybe I don't do as badly as I've historically done. She's also worth leveling up just because she has some good perks. Like, I don't think they're good as in, like, everybody can use them, per se, but they're definitely good in that, like, Legion would really love, whatever the name of that perk that slows down survivors' ability to do stuff if they're injured. Because Legion tends to injure people, so he can kind of create a lose-lose situation where people are just getting pressured because they're either having a hard time keeping up healing, or they're healing but spending time off generators. Not that Legion is necessarily good. Legion's problem is mostly that once you get people injured, he becomes basic in one killer. He doesn't have anything else. So anybody else that has any other way of surprising a survivor or anything like that, they're immediately going to be better than Legion in the long run. But that's just a weird example. And Hag would be good to level her up and get some stuff. I've gotten a better appreciation for Hag just because, I think I mentioned this last time, you play her a little bit like Trapper, and you start getting some hits nailed that are really quite fun. Oh well. I should probably end all that stuff because, you know, that's all blabber and that's stuff. If there's anything else, so my company is having a barbecue this coming Friday, and this is our first time getting together in person for a big company event in a long time, and I think I'm still technically a member of the gaming committee. I'm not quite sure why, per se, mostly because when I moved into a new role in the company, I find myself in a whole lot of meetings now. So, there's a lot of conflicts, and the meetings that are related to that position are more important than the gaming committee, obviously. So, you know, I haven't been able to keep in touch, but one of the things I've always wanted to do is, you know, I love bringing hardware and setting things up for people to use. I've done that with games. That's why, I don't know if y'all probably have not seen this stuff here, but there's, like, coolers of stuff. I think over here, my Nintendo Switch stuff is in a cooler like this so that it can be transported places, and I can set up a Nintendo Switch pretty damn easily. And I have an Oculus Quest 1 right here, and I'm gonna have to pull that out and power it up and get it ready for Friday as well. But I've wanted to have a good portable PC option specifically for PC VR, because as good as the Quest VR stuff is, you know, it's still limited to what the Quest can do and what it can set up. Whereas with the PC stuff, I have access to the Steam library, and, you know, as long as I don't choose something that's super graphically intensive, you know, it's good. And I upgraded from an HTC Vive to a Valve Index, and that would raise the question of, okay, what am I going to do with the HTC Vive? And my plan was always to see if I can build a computer that's easy for me to bring places, take the graphics card that the HTC Vive was using, so this new computer's using that graphics card. It's been using it for a while. It's just a 1070, nothing too spectacular. And I'm thinking about this and saying, you know what, let's you know, take a look. As you can see, my living room here has these VR set up, and, you know, I've set it up and it works just fine, at least in standing mode for this. But you can also see, like, some masking tape, colored masking tape. I also purchased a measuring tape. So the idea is I'm going to pack this all up, and I'll be able to transport this VR places. I just need to decide what games to put on there. I mean, I'm going to put Beat Saber on there, but I do want to go with things beyond just Beat Saber, because Beat Saber is kind of a default. I should be doing something that takes advantage of the fact that, hey, I have access to the Steam library. You know, because I already have I already have Beat Saber on the Quest, and it's very possible that what's available on Steam is going to be a hell of a lot better. There may be additional tracks that I have access to or something like that. This will give me the option to, you know, explore Steam library stuff. I just have to figure out what it is. Probably buy a handful of stuff, download, install them, play them, then pack this all up. You might have seen a little traveling bag there. The goal is to, hopefully everything can fit in there, except of course for the computer itself. But if I can do that, then I have a way to transport VR with you know, it's just the HTC Vive, but I still have the ability to transport that somewhere and give more VR experience. It's unfortunate that the Index isn't as travelable, mostly because, you know, I have that plugged into 2080 Ti, which is pretty much the only graphics card from that generation that even holds water to the 30 series stuff, because those 30 series, even the low-end stuff, is a beast. And I think they're all still better than 2080 Ti, but the 2080 Ti just, you know, had a little bit of extra edge there from its previous generation that at least has held me over until we figure out this graphics card thing. Which may be over, I don't remember. I haven't seen people complaining about it as much. So I don't know. But, you know, that's a whole lot of stuff. That's the weird stuff in this busy week of life here. hopefully this has been an entertaining video, even though, you know, the anime DVD collection update part itself proper was surprisingly small. But, oh well. Y'all, have a nice week.